She grabbed my son's backpack and said, "Kids like you don't belong in this neighborhood." I froze for a second, watching from across the street as the school bus pulled away and left my 9-year-old standing there trying not to cry. Karen didn't even look embarrassed. She pointed at our house like she owned the whole town. "Your father needs to learn the rules. I'll make sure he does." Her voice was loud enough for every parent around to hear, yet no one stepped in. My son whispered, "Dad, she follows me every morning," and that hit deeper than anything. I walked toward them, calm on the outside, heart burning inside, and Karen smirked like she already won something. "You think you can just move here and break HOA laws? I'll have you removed." She shoved a bright red paper into my hand, an eviction notice that didn't even have a signature. I looked at her confused because we never signed up for any HOA. Karen leaned in and said, "Trust me, I have connections." For a moment, I almost laughed, but then I noticed her phone already dialing someone, and the way she stared told me she wasn't bluffing. That was the first time I wondered, how far was she willing to go?
Karen didn't even wait for me to speak. She stepped back and yelled like I'd attacked her. "He threatened me! Someone call the police!" Parents froze, some pulled their kids closer, and my son hid behind me, shaking. I kept my hands visible, calm, because I'd seen this performance before. Within minutes, a beat-up silver truck rolled up with neighborhood enforcement written in crooked letters. 2 men jumped out wearing cheap badges you could buy online. Karen pointed at me like she was directing a movie. "Arrest him! He's violating multiple HOA codes!" One of the men actually nodded and reached for handcuffs, not even asking for my name. I looked around. Nobody questioned it. Nobody checked anything. My son whispered, "Dad, please don't go." And that broke me more than her lies. I held up the fake notice she gave me and said, "This isn't even legal." Karen smiled like she enjoyed it. "Legal doesn't matter if I say so." And in that second, I realized this wasn't about rules. She wanted control, and she was willing to ruin us to get it. What she didn't know was, she just tried to arrest the wrong man. Before the tow truck drove off, Karen stormed toward my front yard and ripped out the small wooden swing I'd built for my son. It wasn't hurting anyone, but she tossed it on the sidewalk like trash. "Unapproved structure," she said, breathing hard, like she got stronger every time she destroyed something. My son let out a tiny gasp, and that was it. I stepped between them. "Enough," I said quietly, but Karen only raised her phone higher. "You just threatened a minor. I'm reporting you to Child Services." Her voice had that fake sadness, the kind people use when they want attention. The fake officers nodded like backup singers, and one even wrote something on a crumpled notepad. Then she walked right up to my porch, trying to open the door without a warrant or permission. "We need to inspect the home," she announced. My neighbors peeked from their windows but didn't come out. Nobody wanted to be her next target. I pulled out my own phone, and Karen laughed. "Go ahead, record. No one will believe you. I run this neighborhood." For the first time, I saw fear in my son's eyes, not of her, but of the idea that she might be right. And that's when I knew I had to end this today. I glanced across the street at the traffic camera on the corner, the one she clearly forgot existed. I whispered to myself, "You really picked the wrong family, Karen." Karen finally noticed me staring at the traffic camera, so she rushed to block my view like a kid hiding stolen candy. "Footage won't save you," she snapped. "I already filed a report. Real cops are on their way." She said it with so much confidence that a few neighbors actually stepped outside, whispering like they were waiting for a public arrest. My son gripped my hand, and I gently told him to go inside. Karen laughed. "Yes, hide him. Child Services will want to speak with him anyway." Then she pulled out a thick folder, property maps, printed emails, even photos of my backyard. She waved it like a trophy. "I built a case. You won't just leave, you'll lose custody." For a second, I wondered how many nights she spent digging into our lives. The fake officers stood behind her, nodding like they were part of some official task force. One asked her, "Do we confiscate the house keys now?" And she actually said, "Yes, once the police confirm." She really thought she had authority. Sirens echoed in the distance, and Karen straightened her posture like a queen welcoming her army. "This is where you beg," she whispered. Neighbors pulled out phones, recording, waiting for the moment she imagined, me in cuffs. I didn't move, didn't argue, just watched her pace in circles, rehearsing the victim act she'd repeat to officers. The patrol car turned onto our street, lights flashing, and Karen raised her hand to stop it like she owned the road. "Right here," she yelled. "Arrest him before he runs." The officer stepped out, looking confused, scanning the scene. Karen rushed to them, pointing at me, acting dramatic. "He threatened my child, vandalized HOA property, and refuses eviction." One of the officers glanced at me. Just one quick look, and something changed in his face. Karen didn't notice. She kept talking, louder and louder, like volume proved truth. "You need to take him in immediately." I stayed silent, letting her dig deeper, letting everyone watch. Because she still didn't know. Those weren't just officers, they were my officers. And she was about to find out in the most painful way.
The taller officer walked past Karen without a word and came straight to me. He lowered his voice and said, "Morning, Chief. Everything all right?" Karen froze like someone unplugged her. Her smile vanished, and the fake officer slowly backed up. The neighbor's phone started shaking. They finally understood the show they'd been watching. Karen laughed nervously and whispered, "He's lying. He's not a chief." But the officer turned to her, serious now. "Ma'am, this man is the chief of police for this county." The color left her face. I finally spoke. "You brought fake law enforcement to intimidate a child. You trespassed. You tried to tow a legal vehicle. And you filed a false report." Karen shook her head, desperate. No, I was protecting the neighborhood. I have authority." She pointed at her fake folder like it could save her, but the officer opened it and sighed. "These documents aren't real. None of this is legal." The fake officers tried to run, but more patrol cars were already pulling up, blocking the street. My actual SUV was lowered back onto the ground, untouched. Karen looked around, waiting for someone, anyone, to defend her. But every neighbor backed away, pretending they never knew her. She whispered, "You can't arrest me. I run this place." I stepped closer, calm as ever. "No, Karen, you terrorize it." The officer reached for cuffs, and Karen's eyes widened like she was seeing the ending for the first time. She still didn't realize the biggest twist. This wasn't just about harassment anymore. The traffic camera had caught something she'd pray no one ever saw. The officer checked the traffic camera feed right there on the street. Karen watched over his shoulder, hoping it would prove her right, until her own voice played loud enough for everyone to hear. "Kids like you don't belong here." Then the footage showed her grabbing my son's backpack, ordering the tow truck, directing the fake cops, and trying to break into my home. She covered her mouth, whispering, "No, that's not me." But it was too late. The officer turned to the fake cops and said, "Impersonating law enforcement is a felony," and they were cuffed without a fight. Karen dropped to her knees, crying, begging someone to believe she was just keeping order. But the same neighbors she once controlled stayed silent, some even filming, like fate flipped the camera around on her. When the officer read her charges, child endangerment, trespassing, harassment, false reports, my son stepped outside and stood beside me. Karen reached toward him like she wanted sympathy, but he hid behind me, and that said everything. As they put her in the back of the patrol car, she kept repeating, "You can't do this. I'm the HOA." I finally answered, "There is no HOA here. You made it up." The door shut, sirens faded, and the street felt lighter, like everyone could breathe again. Neighbors came over apologizing for staying quiet. I didn't blame them. Fear makes people small. My son picked up the swing from the sidewalk, and we rebuilt it together before sunset. The tow truck driver returned, embarrassed, and offered to pay for any damage. and for the first time since we moved in, the neighborhood felt like ours. I kissed my son's head and said, "No one will ever touch you again." He smiled, not because I was chief of police, but because he finally believed it. And as I watched him play in our yard, I realized something. People think power is loud, but real power is simple. It's protecting your home, your child, and your peace. I didn't serve this country to be told I don't belong on my own land.
A week later, the case hit the county courthouse, and I showed up only because my son wanted to know it was really over. Karen sat at the defense table, hands shaking, no folder, no audience, no fake authority. The judge played the same footage from the traffic camera, and the courtroom stayed silent. Nobody could understand why someone would go after a child like that. Then the prosecutor revealed something even the neighbors didn't know. Karen didn't own her house. She was renting and had been kicked out of 2 other neighborhoods for doing the same thing. She created fake HOAs wherever she lived just to feel powerful. My son looked at me confused, like he didn't know adults could be that empty inside. When the judge sentenced her, 18 months plus mandatory counseling, Karen didn't scream or argue. She just stared at the floor, finally realizing no one feared her anymore. Outside the courthouse, the parents from the bus stop were waiting. One mom hugged my son, saying, "I should have spoken up sooner." He didn't say anything, but he smiled for the first time around them, and that was enough. The tow truck driver joined too, offering free oil changes for life, still embarrassed he ever believed her. That weekend, the neighborhood threw a small barbecue in our yard. Kids ran around the rebuilt swing, and my son finally used the bus stop without looking over his shoulder. A veteran neighbor shook my hand and said, "Land feels different when it's safe." I looked around. No cameras, no sirens, no fear, just peace. As the sun went down, my son leaned against me and whispered, "Dad, we belong here." And that simple line hit harder than any badge or title ever could. I wrapped an arm around him and watched him laugh with the other kids. People think justice is loud, but sometimes it's just a quiet backyard, a safe child, and a place you're proud to call home. I didn't become chief to control people. I became chief to protect families like mine. And no one, not even a self-made HOA queen, will ever take that away again.
Months passed, and life finally felt normal again. The bus driver now waved at my son every morning, making sure he got on safe. Neighbors who once stayed quiet now greeted us with warm smiles, like they were finally free too. One afternoon, I got a call from the district attorney. Karen tried to appeal, claiming police corruption, but the judge dismissed it in seconds because the evidence was too clear. It didn't even shake me. She couldn't touch us anymore. What did surprise me, though, was when the mayor invited our family to a small-town meeting. I thought it was routine, but when we walked in, people stood and clapped. Not for me, for my son. The mayor said, no child should ever feel unsafe waiting for a school bus, and they installed new security cameras, better lighting, even a bench with his name on it. My son looked up at me, proud but shy, holding my hand like he used to on that first awful morning. On our walk home, he stopped, stared at our house, and said, "This is our forever place." I looked at the yard, the swing we rebuilt, the flag waving on the porch, and realized he was right. Not because I wear a badge, but because we fought for this home together. The sun was setting, and the neighborhood was quiet. No threats, no fake authority, no fear. Just families living in peace. That night, I sat on the porch and watched my son draw chalk on the driveway, and I whispered a promise only the wind heard. No one will ever decide where we belong again. People think power comes from control, but it doesn't. Power is knowing your child can stand on their own land without being questioned. And if anyone ever forgets that, I'm still the chief of police. But honestly, I'm just a dad protecting home. And in this country, that's more than enough.